At 37, Lennox Maxwell made a respectable $115,000 a year, a salary that felt simultaneously substantial and completely inadequate in the dizzying financial ecosystem of New York City. It was a number that could afford a comfortable life, but not the one his wife, Soraya, curated on her vision boards and social media feeds. On a Tuesday evening in June of 2024, at exactly 7:13 p.m., Lennox discovered just how inadequate his entire world had become. He turned his key in the lock of their shared two-bedroom brownstone apartment in Park Slope, a place they'd secured with a down payment scraped together from his small inheritance and her meager commissions as a junior real estate broker. The door swung open into a cavern of silence. The first thing he noticed was the echo. His own footsteps, usually muffled by the $4,000 antique Persian rug they'd bought on their second anniversary, now clicked sharply against the bare hardwood floor. The rug was gone. He looked up. The oil painting of a Harlem street scene by a promising local artist, a piece he'd loved that had cost him $2,200, was also gone. In its place was a stark, pale rectangle on the deep gray wall, a ghost of where it once hung. His heart began a low, heavy drumbeat against his ribs. "Saria?" he called out, the name swallowed by the unnerving emptiness. He walked into the living area, the custom-built bookshelves, filled with his architecture volumes, and her glossy novels were there. But the shelves were barren. The $3,500 leather sofa, the matching armchair, the handcrafted coffee table, all vanished. In the center of the room sat a single, stark white envelope, propped against one of the empty shelf supports. His name was written on it in her perfect, sharp calligraphy. He didn't open it yet. A cold dread, heavier and more suffocating than the humid June air, settled over him. He moved through the apartment like a trespasser in his own life. The kitchen, stripped. The $1,800 set of all-clad cookware. The $600 Vitamix blender. Even the magnetic spice rack from the refrigerator door were gone. The bedroom was the worst. The king-sized bed they'd spent weeks choosing, a $5,000 investment in their shared comfort, had been disassembled and removed. His clothes were piled in a heap in the corner of the walk-in closet. Her side was a graveyard of empty hangers and shoeboxes. The air smelled of her perfume, a lingering, cruel memory of the life that had occupied this space only that morning. He had left for a site visit in Chelsea at 6:30 a.m., kissing her sleeping head goodbye. Now, 12 hours later, he was standing in the ruins of that life. He felt a wave of nausea. He had no idea what was coming, the true depth of the void she had created. This was more than just leaving. This was a strategic erasure, a complete and total liquidation of their shared existence, executed with the brutal efficiency of a corporate raider. He thought of their joint savings account, the one they were building for a future down payment on a place they would own outright. A knot of pure fear tightened in his stomach. He finally walked back to the envelope, his hands trembling slightly as he picked it up. This was the moment his life would be cleaved in two, before the note and after. Do you know that feeling when the ground beneath you simply ceases to exist? Not a sudden earthquake, but a quiet, deliberate removal of every single thing you thought was solid. That's what Lennox felt. For any of you who have had your world pulled out from under you with no warning, let us know in the comments how you found the strength to take that first step forward. Their life together, looking back, had always been a negotiation between his patient vision and her immediate desires. Lennox, a thoughtful and quietly ambitious black man with kind eyes and hair he wore in neat, shoulder-length locks, saw potential in decay. He was a boutique developer, but not the kind that built gleaming glass towers. He found forgotten warehouses in neglected corners of the city, derelict brownstones, with crumbling facades, and saw the bones of something beautiful. He believed in patient capital, in the slow, arduous work of restoration. His uniform was a pair of $150 Red Wing boots, dusty jeans, and a well-worn Carhartt jacket. His greatest joy was peeling back layers of plaster to find original 19th century brick. Saria was the opposite. She was luminous, with deep brown skin that seemed to glow from within and a smile that could disarm a boardroom. She worked for a large, aggressive real estate firm in Midtown, a place that celebrated killer instincts and seven-figure commissions. She saw success in terms of brand names and price tags. While Lennox was excited about a $15,000 structural survey on a dilapidated Chelsea garage, Saria was coveting a $2,400 Burberry trench coat she saw on Madison Avenue. Their arguments, always simmering beneath the surface of domestic normalcy, were about this fundamental difference in philosophy. "We could be living so much better, Lennox," she'd said one night, scrolling through her phone at their $1,500 oak dining table. "Look at this. Mark and Tiffany are in St. Bart's again. Her husband just flipped a condo in NoHo and made $500,000 in 6 months." "That's not what I do, Saria," he'd replied calmly, sketching a floor plan on a notepad. "I'm not a flipper. I build things that are meant to last. It takes time." "Time isn't paying for a week at the Four Seasons," she'd countered, not looking up from the screen. "Your projects are money pits. That warehouse you're obsessed with has been eating our savings for 2 years. We put $40,000 into permits and plans, and for what? It's still just a pile of bricks." He remembered the sting of those words. To him, that pile of bricks was a future masterpiece, a fusion of industrial history and modern living. To her, it was an anchor, holding her back from the life she felt she deserved. She craved the visible, the immediate, the Instagrammable. A $30,000 summer rental in the Hamptons was a tangible victory, a 5-year zoning battle for a property that might one day be worth millions was an abstract, frustrating dream. He paid for the dinners at Daniel, the $800 a plate tasting menus she loved. He bought her the $1,200 Christian Louboutin heels for her birthday, even though it meant dipping into the funds he was setting aside for a crucial environmental report. He saw it as an investment in her happiness, in their marriage. He believed that if he could just get one of his large-scale projects over the finish line, she would finally understand his vision. She would see that his patience wasn't weakness, that his focus on foundational work wasn't a lack of ambition. He thought she was his partner in that dream, a partner who was simply a little more impatient. He had no idea she was merely an investor waiting to cash out. Their apartment was a microcosm of this conflict. His contributions were the solid, unseen things: the down payment, the painstakingly restored original moldings, the upgraded electrical system he'd overseen himself. Her contributions were the glittering surfaces, the designer furniture, the expensive art, the high-end appliances. He had built the foundation, and she had decorated the rooms. And now, she had taken all the decorations, leaving him with nothing but the bare, solid structure he had so carefully built. He was standing in a metaphor for his own life. He finally opened the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind she used for her most important clients. The note was short, brutally concise. "Lennox, I can't do this anymore. I can't wait for your potential to materialize. I need a life, a real one, not a construction site of maybes. By the time you read this, our joint assets will have been moved to secure my future. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the dissolution of our marriage. I've taken what I believe is my fair share for the years I've invested. Consider it a severance package." Saria, severance package. The corporate, impersonal cruelty of the phrase knocked the wind out of him. He sank down, his back against the empty bookshelves, and pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 attempts to enter his passcode. He opened his banking app. The joint savings account, which held $85,342 2 days ago after a payment for a completed consultation had cleared, now read, available balance, $12.74. A cold, metallic taste filled his mouth. She had drained it, all of it. The money from his inheritance, the savings from his freelance architectural work, every dollar he had painstakingly squirreled away. His personal checking account was nearly as bad. He'd transferred most of his cash to the joint account last week to cover a tax payment. He had $1,450 to his name. The front door opened. It was Soraya. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light, looking impeccable, in an $8,700 Armani suit, holding a leather briefcase. She looked not at him, but around the empty room, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. "I see you got my note," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. Lennox slowly got to his feet. "You took everything, Soraya. The money, the furniture, everything." "I took my half," she corrected, her tone sharp and defensive. "I put my career on hold to support your little hobbies. I entertained your boring investor friends. I lived in this dusty neighborhood. I earned it." "My hobbies?" he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Building a business is a hobby? That money was for the Chelsea project. It was for the permits. You know that." She laughed, a short, ugly sound that echoed in the empty space. "Oh, the Chelsea project. The great masterpiece that will never happen. Lennox, you are a low-tier developer playing in a major league city. You have great taste in dilapidated buildings. I'll give you that. But you don't have the stomach to play the real game. You don't have the killer instinct." She took a step closer, her expression hardening. "I'm 36 years old. I'm not going to waste my prime waiting for you to become something you're not. I've met someone. Someone who understands what it takes. Someone who isn't afraid to make real money." Every word was a hammer blow. Low tier. The phrase lodged itself in his brain, a piece of shrapnel he knew he would carry for a long time. "So you strip our home and drain our bank account?" "This is who you are?" he asked, a deep, rising outrage beginning to burn through the shock. "This is what's necessary," she said, her gaze cold and unwavering. "My lawyer will be in touch. He's very good. I suggest you find one of your own, though I'm not sure how you'll afford it." She glanced at his worn boots with a look of pure disdain. "The Audi is parked out front. The title is in my name now. I'll send a courier for the rest of your things tomorrow. You have 24 hours to vacate." She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Don't try to fight this, Lennox. You'll lose. You're a good man. A nice man. But nice men finish last in this city." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, the sound final and absolute. Lennox stood alone in the echoing shell of his life, the words "low tier" and "nice men finish last" ringing in his ears. The outrage was a living thing inside him now, a white-hot core of energy. He had been underestimated his entire life. People saw his quiet nature and mistook it for a lack of drive. They saw his patience and mistook it for a lack of ambition. Soraya had made the same mistake. It was a critical mistake. And in that moment, standing amidst the ruins, a new kind of resolve began to form. He would not get angry. He would get strategic. She thought she had taken everything, but she had left him with the two things that mattered most, his vision and his rage. The divorce was as brutal and efficient as the clean-out. Soraya's lawyer, a shark named Julian Croft, who billed at $1,200 per hour, came at him with everything. They painted him as a financial failure, a deadbeat dreamer whose speculative ventures, as they called his life's work, had been a constant drain on marital assets. They produced bank statements showing the funds he'd poured into surveys, permits, and architectural plans for the Chelsea and Tribeca properties. Mr. Maxwell used his wife's financial stability as a safety net to fund his unprofitable hobbies, Croft declared in a preliminary hearing, his voice smooth and condescending. Saria sat beside him, looking like a victim, her expression a careful mask of sorrowful resignation. Lennox sat with his court-appointed lawyer, a tired man in a crumpled suit who seemed overwhelmed before they even began. They offered a settlement. Saria would officially take the full contents of the joint account she'd already emptied. She would take the 2023 Audi Q5, valued at $60,000. She would take the art, the furniture, every last vestige of their shared life. In exchange, she would not pursue any future claims on his business, Maxwell Design and Restoration LLC. The LLC at that point was worth next to nothing on paper. Its only assets were 2 sets of architectural plans and 2 long-term leases on derelict properties that were currently liabilities, costing money every month in taxes and fees. To Saria and her lawyer, it was worthless, a joke. They were letting him keep his pile of debt. Sign it, his lawyer advised, sighing. She has the aggressive counsel and the narrative. If you fight, you'll end up with less than this and a mountain of legal fees. Lennox looked across the table at Saria. She met his gaze, and for a fleeting second, he saw a flicker of triumph, of pity. It was the look of someone who believed they had already won, so decisively that the paperwork was a mere formality. That look sealed it. "Okay," Lennox said, his voice steady. "I'll sign." He signed the document that legally severed him from his past and, in Saria's mind, his future. He signed away everything they had built together. But what she didn't know, what her $1,200 an hour lawyer had failed to uncover in his cursory due diligence, was that the day before Saria had emptied their accounts, Lennox had received final, after-hours email confirmation of a massive zoning variance he had been fighting for 3 years. The Chelsea property was no longer just a garage. It was now approved for a 10-story residential conversion. And the Tribeca warehouse? A silent partner, a wealthy industrialist who believed in Lennox's vision, had signed a letter of intent to fund the entire construction phase just a week prior. The documents were stored on a private server, not the shared laptop Saria had taken. The LLC wasn't a pile of debt. It was a launch pad, and he had just gotten her to sign a document relinquishing all claims to it, forever. She had mistaken the rocket for the rock. The 2 years that followed were a study in contrast. Publicly, Lennox was a broken man. He moved into a 400-square-foot studio apartment in a walk-up building in Bushwick, Brooklyn. The rent was $1,800 a month, a figure that ate up most of his freelance income. The place was cramped and depressing, with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. He furnished it from the dregs of the internet. A $200 mattress in a box from Amazon, a $50 folding card table that served as his desk and dining table, and 3 mismatched chairs he bought for $10 each from a stoop sale. When mutual acquaintances saw him, they saw the narrative Saria had crafted. They saw the low-tier developer, the failed dreamer. He lost weight. He had dark circles under his eyes. He wore the same rotation of worn-out jeans and faded t-shirts. He played the part to perfection. "I heard about you and Saria," a former friend said, bumping into him at a coffee shop on Wyckoff Avenue. "Tough break, man. She's doing great, though. Just closed a huge deal on a penthouse in Lenox Hill. Driving a new BMW 7 Series now, a $95,000 beauty." "That's good to hear," Lennox said, mustering a weak smile. "She deserves to be successful." He paid for his $3 black coffee and left, feeling the man's pity on his back like a physical weight. Every such encounter was a small, sharp humiliation, but each one was also fuel. He was a ghost, a man who had fallen off the map. No one was watching him. No one was paying attention. And that was his greatest asset. Privately, Lennox was a man possessed. His life ran on a relentless, punishing schedule. He was up at 4:30 a.m. every day, from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. At his flimsy card table in the dim light of his Brooklyn studio, he was on the phone with architects, engineers, and his silent funding partner. He was value engineering every aspect of the two simultaneous projects, squeezing every drop of potential from every dollar. At 8:30 a.m., he would take the L train to Manhattan. He didn't look like a developer overseeing two of the city's most ambitious boutique conversions. He looked like another anonymous worker, tired and worn down. He spent his days on site, alternating between the cavernous, dusty shell of the Tribeca warehouse and the skeletal frame of the rising Chelsea building. He wore his hard hat and his red-wing boots, covered in a layer of grime. He spoke with foremen, reviewed change orders, and solved the 1,000 daily problems that arise when you are trying to bend steel and concrete to your will. His real lawyer, Alani Hassan, was the opposite of his divorce attorney. She was a sharp, fiercely intelligent black woman in her late 40s, with elegant silver braids and a reputation for being the most discreet and strategic real estate lawyer in the city. Her office was a quiet, minimalist space in the Seagram building. "The divorce decree is ironclad, Lennox," she confirmed, in one of their first meetings after the settlement, her eyes scanning the document with practiced speed. Her fee was a steep $1,500 an hour, but she was worth every penny. She and her counsel were so focused on your past and present liquidity that they completely dismissed your future potential. They defined Maxwell Design and Restoration by its 2024 balance sheet. A rookie mistake, but a fortunate one for you. "She called me low tier," Lennox told her, the words still tasting like ash. Alani looked at him over the top of her glasses, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "The most dangerous man in any room is the one everyone underestimates. Let them think you're low tier. Let them think you're finished. While they're celebrating, you'll be building your empire in silence." And so he did. He poured every ounce of his energy, his pain, and his rage into the brick and mortar of his projects. The Chelsea building, a sleek modern tower rising from the husk of the old garage, was named the Phoenix. The Tribeca warehouse, with its soaring 20-foot ceilings and original cast-iron columns, became the Foundry. He was creating spaces of breathtaking beauty, but he lived in squalor. He ate cheap takeout, his social life ceased to exist, and his only comfort was the slow, steady progress he saw each day. He was a monk, and construction was his religion. He was building his revenge, one perfectly laid brick at a time. He had no idea just how spectacular the unveiling would be. October 2026, 2 years and 4 months after his life had been dismantled. Saria sat in her office on the 54th floor of a glass tower in Hudson Yards. Her firm had promoted her to senior partner. Her desk was a vast expanse of polished white marble, and her chair was a $4,000 Herman Miller Aeron. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, she had a panoramic view of the Hudson River and the city she had, in her mind, conquered. Life was good. The man she'd left Lennox for, a hedge fund manager named Damien, was successful and generous. They lived in a sprawling pre-war apartment on Park Avenue. She drove the white BMW 7 Series she had won. She was scrolling idly through her newsfeed during a lull between calls, a smug little smile on her face. She passed by articles about market trends, celebrity gossip, And then a headline from Architectural Digest caught her eye. The Alchemist of Tribeca, how Lennox Maxwell turned grit into a $40 million glasshouse in the sky. The name hit her like a physical blow. Lennox Maxwell. It couldn't be. She clicked the link, her heart suddenly pounding. The page loaded, and the first image was a 2-page spread of a penthouse so stunning it took her breath away. A double-height living room with a wall of glass overlooking the entire downtown skyline. A floating staircase made of steel and reclaimed oak. A rooftop terrace with a private garden, and an infinity-edge plunge pool that seemed to spill into the sky. Her hands started to shake. She scrolled down. There he was, Lennox. But not the Lennox she remembered. The man in the dusty jeans and worn-out boots. This was a Lennox she had never seen before. He was standing on the terrace at sunset, leaning against the glass balustrade. He wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, no tie, his locks now longer and tied back elegantly. He looked calm, powerful, and serene. The defeated man she had jettisoned was gone. In his place was a king in his castle. She began to read the article, her eyes scanning the text with frantic speed. Fonsakim. Maxwell, 39, is the quiet force behind two of the most talked-about conversions in recent Manhattan history, the Phoenix and Chelsea, a 30-unit luxury condominium that sold out pre-construction for a total of $180 million, and the Foundry in Tribeca, where he himself resides in the spectacular triplex penthouse. $180 million. The number swam before her eyes. A story of remarkable resilience. After a difficult divorce in 2024 left him with little more than his architectural plans, Maxwell poured everything into his work. It was a period of clearing out what was no longer foundational. Maxwell says, his only comment on his personal life. I wanted to build something real, something with integrity, from the ground up. Clearing out what was no longer foundational. The quote was a dagger. He was talking about her. The article went on, detailing the genius of his designs, the bidding wars for the units, the praise from critics. It mentioned his company, Maxwell Design and Restoration LLC, was now valued at over $250 million. And then came the final, crushing detail, the penthouse. The crown jewel is Maxwell's own residence, a 7,000-square-foot triplex valued at an estimated $40 million. It is a space that is both a home and a statement, a testament to the power of vision, patience, and betting on oneself when no one else will. $40 million. Saria felt the blood drain from her face. The marble desk felt cold beneath her suddenly clammy hands. The panoramic view from her window seemed to mock her. She had been sitting here on the 54th floor thinking she was on top of the world. Lennox was in a glass house in the sky, looking down on her. The full weight of her miscalculation crashed down on her. The low-tier developer, the unprofitable hobbies, the pile of bricks. She had thrown away a winning lottery ticket because she was too impatient to wait for the numbers to be called. The man she had dismissed as a failure had built an empire in the shadows of her own perceived success, a primal scream of rage and regret built in her chest. She grabbed her $1,500 iPhone, her fingers fumbling as she scrolled to his contact information. She hadn't spoken to him in 2 years. His name in her phone was just Lennox. No heart emoji, no pet name. Just the plain, stark name of a man she had discarded. She pressed the call button, her mind racing. This wasn't over. This couldn't be over. That money, that penthouse. It was hers. It had to be hers. She had invested years. It was her severance package. Lennox was in a meeting in his home office, a glass-walled room on the second level of the penthouse that overlooked the sprawling living area below. He was meeting with two promising young apprentices, a man and a woman from the South Bronx, whom he was mentoring. He was showing them the original, hand-drawn plans for the foundry, explaining how he'd preserved the 120-year-old brickwork. His phone, a simple functional device, buzzed on the polished concrete desk. The screen lit up with Saria's name. A strange calm settled over him. He had known this day would come. He had rehearsed it in his mind 1,000 times. He looked at the phone, let it buzz twice more, and then declined the call. He turned his attention back to his apprentices, a genuine smile on his face. Now, look at this detail on the joinery. A minute later, the phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification. He ignored it, and again, and again. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, the notifications piled up. A frantic digital barrage. Saria's voice, when he finally listened to the messages later that evening, was a case study in emotional disintegration. He played them on speaker for Alani Hassan, who was on the other end of a video call, a glass of red wine in her hand. Voicemail 1, 3:14 p.m. Lennox, it's Saria. I just saw the article in Architectural Digest. It's incredible. Is this real? The Penthouse? Call me back. I'm so confused. Her voice was tight with shock. Voicemail 2, 3:22 p.m. Lennox, pick up the phone. You have to call me. We need to talk about this. You hid this from me. You were working on this during our marriage. That is marital property. You defrauded me, Lennox. The confusion was already hardening into accusation. Voicemail 3, 3:45 p.m. Julian is going to be hearing from me. You think you can get away with this? Hiding hundreds of millions of dollars? The courts will see right through this. You owe me half, Lennox, half of everything. The voice was shrill now, laced with fury. Alani took a slow sip of her wine. Predictable, she said, her voice calm. Stage 1, shock. Stage 2, righteous indignation. Stage 3, threats. Voicemail 4, 4:15 p.m. Please, Lennox, just talk to me. I don't understand how you could do this to me. After everything we had. I loved you. Don't you remember that? Don't I deserve some part of this? For the years I gave you? The anger had fractured into pleading. Voicemail 5 through 12 were a chaotic mix of these themes, growing more desperate with each call. By evening, the threats had returned, interspersed with sobs. Voicemail 13, 6:57 p.m. You think you're so smart, don't you? Living in your glass tower? But you're still just that sad little man who likes playing with bricks. I made you. My connections, my support. You would be nothing without me. Lennox felt nothing. The words that once had the power to shatter him now felt like pebbles thrown against a fortress wall. He had spent 2 years turning his pain into steel and concrete. He was untouchable. The next morning, the strike began. Per Alani's precise instructions, Lennox forwarded the most legally volatile voicemail, the one where she accused him of fraud, to Alani with a one-word email, handle. At 9:01 a.m., an email, drafted weeks in advance, was sent from Alani Hassan's office to Saria's work and personal email addresses. Subject: cease and desist communication. Dear Ms. Jenkins, this firm represents Mr. Lennox Maxwell. We are in receipt of 22 voicemail messages and 14 text messages you sent to our client yesterday, October 15th, 2026. Please be advised that your accusations of fraud are baseless, defamatory, and legally actionable. The division of assets related to your 2024 divorce is governed by a legally binding decree signed by you and witnessed by your counsel, which explicitly relinquishes any and all future claims on the entity known as Maxwell Design and Restoration, LLC. You are hereby instructed to cease and desist all direct communication with Mr. Maxwell. Any further attempts to contact him will be considered harassment. All future correspondence must be directed through this office. Sincerely, Alani Hassan, Esquire. At 10:30 a.m., Saria, having ignored the email, called Lennox's office line, a number she'd found on the new company website. The call was answered on the second ring. Maxwell Restoration, this is Marcus. The voice was young, polite, and completely impassable. Marcus was Lennox's new assistant, a sharp young man from Queens whom Lennox had hired from his mentorship program. "I need to speak to Lennox Maxwell immediately," Saria demanded. "I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell is in a design review for the remainder of the day. May I take a message?" "This is his ex-wife Saria. It's a personal emergency. Put him on the phone right now." There was a brief, calculated pause. "Ah, yes. Ms. Jenkins, we have a note on file here. All correspondence from you is to be directed to Mr. Maxwell's attorney, Ms. Alani Hassan, at Hassan and Associates. I can give you her number if you'd like." "I don't want her number. I want to talk to my ex-husband," she shrieked into the phone. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Marcus said, his tone still perfectly even. "Have a nice day, Ms. Jenkins." He hung up the phone. Then, following the protocol Lennox and Alani had established, he blocked her number from the office system. He then blocked her on Lennox's personal cell and blocked her email addresses from the server. The final wall of the fortress had just been raised. Saria was locked out, completely. She had been referred to counsel, ignored. And then, with the click of a button, she had been deleted. The silence that followed was, for Lennox, the sound of absolute victory. The consequences for Saria cascaded with brutal speed. Her first move was to call her old lawyer, Julian Croft. She stormed into his office, the Architectural Digest article clutched in her hand, her face a mask of fury. "He hid it all," she raged. "Hundreds of millions of dollars. He committed fraud." Croft, who had since heard the whispers about Lennox Maxwell's meteoric rise, listened with a pained expression. He reviewed the divorce decree she had so eagerly signed 2 years prior. "Saria," he said, his voice losing its usual predatory smoothness, "there's nothing I can do." "What do you mean there's nothing you can do? Sue him? Take him for everything he has?" "You signed it," he said, tapping the document. "You and I agreed that the LLC was a non-asset. We made a strategic decision to go after liquid assets, which you received. His success came after the decree was finalized. His projects were funded after the marriage was dissolved. There's no fraud here. There's just exceptionally bad timing on our part." "So you're telling me I'm entitled to nothing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Legally? Nothing," he confirmed. "To even file a motion to reconsider would be frivolous. A judge would throw it out and likely sanction us for wasting the court's time. I cannot in good faith take this case." He did, however, charge her a $5,000 consultation fee for the hour of his time. Her next blow came from her partner, Damien. The hedge fund manager had been attracted to her ambition and what he saw as her sharp, unsentimental nature. But her frantic, obsessive quest to claw back Lennox's fortune was not sharp. It was desperate. It was messy. "I'm hearing your name all over town, Saria," he told her one evening in their Park Avenue apartment, swirling a $300 glass of scotch. "People are talking. They're saying you're trying to sue your ex-husband after you left him with nothing. It doesn't look good." "He owes me," she insisted. "It doesn't matter what you think he owes you," Damien said coldly. "It's about appearances. This drama. It's not a good look for me or for you. I think it's best if we take some space." He moved out a week later, leaving her with the full burden of their $22,000 a month rent. The final blow was professional. The New York real estate community is a small, gossipy world. The story of Saria's spectacular misjudgment became a cautionary tale, told with a side of schadenfreude at broker open houses and industry mixers. She was seen as someone who couldn't spot true value, the ultimate sin for a broker. Her instincts were bad. Worse, her public desperation made clients nervous. Her referral pipeline dried up. High-value clients who wanted a broker with a reputation for quiet competence, not public drama, began to steer clear of her. Within 6 months, she could no longer afford the Park Avenue apartment. She had to sell the white BMW 7 Series, taking a $25,000 loss. She moved to a smaller, less prestigious apartment on the Upper East Side. The Armani suits were replaced with less expensive brands. The life she had so carefully constructed, the life she had destroyed her marriage for, was crumbling around her piece by piece. She had cashed out for what she thought was a fortune, only to discover she had sold her shares in a billion-dollar company for pennies on the dollar right before its IPO. She hadn't just lost money, she had lost face, and in her world, that was everything. 1 year later, on a crisp October afternoon in 2027, Lennox stood on his terrace, tending to the small garden he had planted. There were herbs, tomato vines, and a small, thriving patch of lavender. The city stretched out below him, a breathtaking panorama of steel, glass, and ambition. The penthouse was not a monument to his victory. It had become a home. The vast spaces were filled not with ostentatious displays of wealth, but with books, comfortable furniture, and the laughter of the young apprentices he now mentored. He had started the Maxwell Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to funding and mentoring young, aspiring developers and architects from underserved communities across the 5 boroughs. He had learned that his true passion wasn't just in restoring buildings, but in helping to build lives. He brought his mentees to his penthouse not to show off, but to show them what was possible. He wanted them to see that the view from the top wasn't a privilege to be hoarded, but a perspective to be shared. His mother, whose wisdom had been a quiet anchor during his darkest days, now visited every Sunday. She would sit on the terrace, her silver braids catching the sunlight, and they would talk for hours. "You didn't build this place with anger, baby," she had told him once, looking around the sun-drenched living room. "You built it with purpose. The anger was just the kindling to start the fire." He had made peace with what Saria had done. The rage had long since cooled, leaving behind not a scar but a kind of clarity. He understood now that some people are decorators and some people are builders. Saria could only see the surface of things, the immediate glittering prize. She didn't have the patience or the vision for the foundation. He had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his own. He refused to let her betrayal occupy any more space in the magnificent life he had built. As the sun began to set, casting long, golden rays across the Hudson River, he changed into his running clothes. His daily run through Hudson River Park had become a ritual, a moving meditation. As he ran along the waterfront, the cool air on his face, he felt a profound sense of peace. He wasn't running from anything anymore. He was running toward the endless possibility of the evening sky. He realized that true wealth was never about the dollar amount attached to your name. It wasn't the $40 million penthouse or the $250 million valuation. True wealth was the ability to build something meaningful from ruins. It was the strength of your character, the integrity of your work, and the peace in your own heart. Saria had taken everything she could see, everything she could touch, but she had left him with the only things that were truly priceless. It's a powerful lesson to learn, that what people try to take from you can sometimes reveal the very things they can never touch. Have you ever had a moment of loss that ultimately led to your greatest strength? Share your story with our community below. We find so much hope in hearing how people rebuild. And if you're inspired by Lennox's journey, Don't forget to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of resilience and justice.